All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Heat Smart FLX South series of presentations. Tonight's presentation is going to be focusing on heat pumps. So whether you are joining us on Zoom or from Facebook, welcome. Just for a note for if you're tuning in via Facebook, we will be monitoring. We will not have a moderator for the chat at this point, but please put any questions, comments, etc., and get excited in the chat, because I will be going through that tomorrow to help answer some questions. So without much further ado, we will be recording this session. If you wouldn't mind putting yourself on mute unless you have a question. At various points, we'll be taking a break to check for if there are any questions folks have. And thank you to Matt from Halco for joining us, who will be helping to monitor the chat, helping to answer some questions, and admit people who might be coming to join us just in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. All right, can everyone see us? Pretty good? We looking good? Okay, so welcome again to our 21st Century Heating and Cooling session. This webinar we blocked out for about an hour and a half, including the presentation and some awesome question answers with our talented teammate contractor partners. We probably won't take all that amount of time, but please sit back and enjoy. And this session again will be focused on heat pumps 101. So just to get us started, if you haven't heard of our Heat Smart program, Heat Smart FLX South is one of about 20 Heat Smart sister programs spread across New York State. We are based at Cornell Cooperative Extension, right in Schuyler County, but we also serve the communities of Steuben, Seneca and Yates, as well as Schuyler. We are supported by NYSERDA, New York State Energy and Research Development Authority, as well as our cooperative extension and sister extensions in the 4 county districts that we serve. We also are supported by our partners, local governments, and we're just really excited to help empower folks to enable them to not only adopt heat pumps in their home, but if you tuned in a few sessions ago, weatherization as well. So why is our campaign even here? Why are we in your community? So our focus is to help decrease the heating and cooling costs for our households and small businesses, increasing comfort, health and safety, and at the same time, while those things are going on the up and up, decreasing our fossil fuel usage to lower our carbon footprint. So thank you for joining me tonight. To look a bit of a bigger picture before we dive into heat pumps, I want to mention that about 75% of our energy usage is typically for a New York State home is for heating and cooling. Small percent for air conditioning, because not everyone has access to that, and it's cold up here, so mostly with heating. But the average New York household is paying about $2,500 in their energy bills per year. And that's anything from folks using like pellets or wood, kerosene, oil, natural gas, etc. So by switching over and checking out heat pumps as an option, you could save hundreds, if not more, a year with this awesome heating and cooling technology. So where are we at with the climate change thing going on? I know it's kind of pouring out, so it's making me think about that a bit more as we get more and more rain. But about 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions actually come from our buildings, our homes, where we shop, where we work. And by checking out heat pumps, we can help bring this number down. So let's see if it could be a fit. This is a fit whether you're a homeowner, a renter, a landlord, or for a small business or nonprofit. So if I say the word home, for a lot of this session, that also means for your folks who have businesses as well. So what is the pathway? So a couple weeks ago, we chatted about weatherizing the space to get ready for our heat pumps. And just a very quick summary of that, we want to focus really on weatherization as well. Looking at the sweater building blocks, as I call it, having good insulation and air sealing. So the idea of that, in the sense, is kind of think about if you have a nice cozy sweater. Remember back in the winter when it was pretty frigid, maybe has a wacky animal pattern on it, and you're about to go outside and you put on that super warm sweater, which is your AKA insulation, and you walk outside and you don't feel the cold because you're nice and cozy. You walk around the bend and you're not so cozy because a gust of air comes right through your sweater or insulation. So you run back to your home, put on your windbreaker, which we call our air sealing, and you go back out and you brace yourself for going around that corner, but you don't feel anything because just like your home can have, you have your insulation air sealing. So that's what we hope to have for your homes as well. So a good way to check that out is getting a no-cost energy audit. You've prepaid through your utility bill. Our contractor partner, Halco, does our weatherization and energy audits so they can check out air leaks, how's the insulation going on. They can do some health and safety checks, check out your appliance efficiency, and there's more options from there. All right, so you're like, all right, what about the presentation? I thought we were talking about heat pumps. Well, we're going to dive right in now, folks. So great heating solutions are heat pumps, and they come in two different forms. We have air source versions, and we have ground source versions. So let's dig a bit deeper. Energy efficiency, I'm just going to cover these really quickly because I know you're excited to dig in, and we'll be talking about these a little more in depth later in our presentation. Key topics to think about when we're talking about these heat pump options: energy costs in comparison to our expensive oil, propane, and electric resistance. Those are on the up and up. They fluctuate a lot. If we're looking at home comfort, being comfortable with our cooling and heating and getting it efficiently, having different zone possibilities might be something you're interested in. Having a healthy home, no combustion with heat pumps. They run on electric, who knew? And having great air infiltration as well. Climate-wise, reducing greenhouse gases by having it through electric, which you can pair well with solar. So how does a heat pump work? You actually have a heat pump in your home. It's called your refrigerator. And the way that a heat pump works is it's different than your traditional heating systems, which have to burn something to create heat. Heat pumps will use the existing heat around them. So if it's an air version, it'll use the air literally to grab the heat from that. And if it's in the ground, it'll use the ground temperatures to heat your home, even in the winter. Heat pumps will either transfer heat into or out of space to get the temperature you need. So think about your fridge. Why is it cold? Because it's actually moving the heat out of it to cool it. That's what your heat pump would do for your home or business. If you're trying to heat it, it would work opposite, and you would move heat into the home to get it nice and warm. We don't do that with refrigerators because it doesn't work out well, but for regular heat pumps, they work both ways. So air source heat pumps, they are great. They come in a variety of versions. They are 2 to 3 times more energy efficient than our typical propane, oil, electric resistance heating. They come in 2 forms. You can get a retrofit into existing ductwork, or you can check out what's called a mini split system that comes in a floor or ground mount. And if we're looking at the images in the slide here, we're seeing on the left-hand side, there's the indoor unit portion. It's called a mini split or a head. This version is wall mounted. And you can work it with a remote. You can have it in various spaces for your heating and cooling. The outdoor unit is what we see on the right-hand side. That's the outdoor condenser. And the little tail that comes out the back is the coolant line that then goes to the individual mini splits within the home to get heating or cooling needs that you need. I guess maybe cooling for this time of year. The great thing with the mini split version is you can do partial heating options. That can sometimes also be done with ducts, but we see it more commonly with the mini splits. And heat pumps are great. They can work in our cold climates and even provide heat down to -13 degrees. That's pretty great. Air source heat pumps have a lot of benefits. And I also wanted to kind of highlight some other versions of heat pumps for the air source in this image. I mentioned you can come ducted versions. So you still have like your duct system in your basement or attic, but these are just showing some images. In kind of the center, we see a ceiling cassette is what they call it, and the hot or cold air would come through that. And there's also mini ducts that can get put in that we see at the right side of our slide here. So benefits, great energy savings compared to costly fossil fuels, really efficient air conditioning with or without ductwork. Full heating replacement can be done or could be partially done. So there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to air source heat pumps to meet different cost needs, comfort needs, etc. Mini splits, as mentioned a little bit earlier, can provide great zonal control. So say you just have, maybe the kids are at college or they'll be going soon, and you have that room not kept as cold because you don't need to, because they're not there. Or maybe you have an addition or something that you just don't use as often, that you can change the temperature and have it cozier in the spaces you're using. Mini split systems are also really nice and quiet, which can be a great win-win. If we're looking at kind of like pros and cons, things to think about when you're making a decision, initial costs can be expensive. If you're someone who's looking at doing a gas furnace and central air compared to the initial cost of an air source heat pump, you might be a little shocked, but we're going to be chatting about a ton of incentives to definitely make it worth your while. If you have an older home that's poorly insulated, doesn't have a great envelope, maybe you didn't check out some weatherization options, maybe you need a backup system because it just wouldn't meet your comfort needs. Is there an aesthetic concern for you? Do you like the mini splits? Do you prefer the ducted? Do you want to look at some other options? Weather-wise, you need to keep the outdoor condenser unit we saw clear of snow. It does do a defrost cycle that we'll chat about a bit later. And we'll also want to check for if there's any mice who might be bugging those coolant lines outside. There will have to be some behavior changes. You want to keep it a nice steady temperature. That actually might make it easier. So instead of having what we were always taught as kids, turn the temperature down when you leave, turn it back up when you come home. This is just a steady temperature to keep it the most efficient and make it the most cost effective for you. So that could be seen as a negative or positive, depending how you look at it. And then if you do have a backup system, how are you going to get the two to kind of work together? So thinking of strategies for that. Controls or backup systems may or not be fully integrated, so something to keep in mind and chat with your contractor about. So what are the costs that we have for these systems here? So what we're looking at, a typical cost before we even look at any incentives, a mini split could be, this is just a very ballpark, anything from about $3,500 to $5,000 just for one unit. If you're doing multiple zones, maybe on average about $4,000 per zone. And if you're doing a ducted system, could be anywhere from about $10,000 to $15,000 for a whole home. Keep in mind, there could be little adder costs that could come up. Common ones could be line sets, electrical upgrades, any upgrades to indoor units, maybe duct modification or thermostat. So we kind of looked at some of the pros and the cons, but what really can make it a great fit? There's a lot of things that can make adopting an air source heat pump a great fit for your home or business. So again, I keep driving that point home. Are you on those expensive heating systems? Your electric baseboards, your fuel oils, your propanes. I see a lot of propane tanks as I'm driving in, and I think one of our contractors actually has a billboard that has a propane tank being like, are you interested in switching? Is your home well insulated so you're ready to take home a heat pump into your home? Do you want to have quiet air conditioning without having ductwork put in? Do you have folks in your home who have indoor who have breathing concerns with allergies, COPD, et cetera, that heat pumps could help take care of with their great filtration system? Do you have a new addition? There's many things to keep going on about this, but you get kind of the picture about what could make it a great fit. So this is the fun stuff. What money can we put towards this to make it more affordable? So the majority of our incentives come from NYSEG and the other major utility companies. For the NYSEG numbers, this may vary if you're with another utility, but if you're with NYSEG for electric, it would be $1,000 per 10,000 heating units, which are called BTUs. And what basically a BTU stands for, it sounds really fancy, but it's not. It equals the energy released by one single burning match. So if you had 10,000 of those, the equivalent would be getting $1,000. On average, we see a demands of these heating units of 25,000 to 60,000, which translates to the fun part of getting money back. Roughly $2,500 to $6,000 is what we commonly see for homes doing a full adoption for air source heat pumps. If you're doing that, maybe just that addition, putting in like a mini split unit, for example, there's also partial heating options getting $500 per outdoor condenser unit. And if you have enough tax liability, there's a nice little carrot of $300 federal tax credit. But we won't stop there. We'll talk about more funding, but this is the standard one, regardless of income, that everyone can grab. All right, so the sister of air source heat pumps, we bring in ground source heat pumps. Those are also, you might have heard the term geothermal heat pumps, same thing. Ground source heat pumps are about 4 to 5 times more energy efficient than, again, those expensive fossil fuel systems we chatted about. They draw the heat instead of from the air, from the ground itself, which is at a comfortable 50-55 degrees to make it nice and stable. And ground source heat pumps are best for whole home use. So what are ground source heat pumps? Okay, so they come in a couple different forms. You can get them ducted, or they can come into your home as a water-based system. The outdoor is either trenched down to a certain amount, or a hole is bored. We'll get into those details a bit more to lay those coolant lines in for the outdoor portion. And usually that requires some drilling and excavation of the yard. Most commonly, that will be done with what's called a closed loop system, which is used for ground. There are open loop systems that can be used in groundwater. We don't specifically use this with the Heat Smart Epilex South program unless there's an issue with project completion, and then we'll accept doing those. But this kind of shows a bit more of what they look like. So you can get the ducted systems. So we see an image on the right side of a ducted system example, or water-based systems. So these can be done for new builds or possible retrofits for like radiant floor heating. You can look at doing a retrofit with hot water baseboard. They don't tend to be as compatible with radiators or steam, but definitely check with one of our contractors. We have many who do ground source heat pumps, and they'll be able to take a look and see what they can rustle for you for options. For ground source heat pumps, when it comes to water-based systems, there's a little bit more finagling that gets done to get the cooling side, but you'll be in good hands with some of our vetted program contractors to walk you through those options. And again, if we look at the image more in the middle or to the left, that is showing an example of ground source heat pump system. This is actually in someone's home who has radiant floor heating that they retrofitted and got off of propane. So very cool options for folks. Lots of benefits. They are the most energy efficient out of all the heat pumps in the heat pump family, even more than the air source. They don't get any kind of energy loss from extreme cold that we get up here, because again, the outdoor portion is underground. They have a really long system lifespan. Estimate, pending manufacturer will vary, is roughly 25 years for the indoor portion and anywhere from 50 to 100 years for the outdoor portion. And they don't need a backup system at all. Weatherization is still good, but nice to know that. And with ground source heat pumps, you can also have an add-on hot water heater system for whole home needs or for partial needs. This specific image here is actually showing our friend Paul, who lives in Trumansburg in Schuyler County, actually powers his heat pump as well as other energy needs with his solar system. So again, they compare nicely together. So something to think about for like pros and cons when you're looking at the different system types is, as mentioned again, excavation is needed. They need to bring in some rigs to do some digging. If you do the system, there are two types of systems. You could do like a vertical system where they dig up a bunch of the ground, lay coolant lines go about 6-ish feet down. Or if you don't have as much space or have other constrictions, they bring in a well rig and do vertical holes down to lay the coolant lines. So those are just things to keep in mind. There's a little bit of a disturbance. And usually restoration costs for that disturbance will have a bit of an extra cost, or you can get creative with how you deal with that. Closed loop systems can sometimes have limited availability to increase capacity or modify the system. But again, definitely chat with our contractors if this is something you're looking into, because they are the professionals on that end. All right, so again, you're like, all right, well, how much does this cost? Typical costs are, without incentives, again, not looking at that yet, we'll pile those on in a bit, about $22,000 to $50,000. You can get horizontal closed loops. So basically, like we said, you can get where they do a bunch of trenching about 6-ish feet down. That tends to be a bit cheaper. The vertical closed loop system where they do a borehole with a well rig and go down for well systems, not as deep as a well usually though. Those can be more expensive, but check with your contractor because that will usually depend if they're subcontracting to dig those vertical wells or if they already have the equipment. So it can vary. Many systems are custom designed when it comes to ground source heat pumps. An additional cost just to keep in mind are, as a variable speed pump, is there kind of a snow melting adaptation it has? Are you adding hot water to it, etc. Okay, so how can it be a good fit? Some of this is a bit of a repeat from looking at air source. Again, are you on those expensive heating systems? Are you trying to get off of fossil fuels? Maybe you're on natural gas. Are you looking at outdoor aesthetics, or do you not mind? Is your heating or central AC older? And some other points to consider. This image here is again of Paul's house, and he actually got really creative We're going to be chatting with Paul later and one of our contractors. So this is just a sneak peek before we do their showcase on September 1st. But if you see their garden and the strip of land, that's actually where the lines were laid for his ground source heat pump system. And he just turned it into a garden. So that worked out well for him. All right, so the great incentives we can tack on. So again, regardless of income, if you have a NYSEG Electric, there is the incentives of about $1,500 per 10,000 of those BTUs heating units we chatted about earlier. So the average household we're seeing gets roughly just shy of $4,000 to $9,000. And if you have tax liability, there's actually a 26% federal tax credit, which can make it extremely affordable. And NYSERDA, who helps fund our programs, actually offers some special loans to help bridge that gap if you get the ground source heat pump system earlier on and you're still waiting to get that tax credit at the end of the year. So some great options. Now, there are other incentives that our contractors through our program can really braid nicely together to help make things more affordable. So again, everyone can get the NYSEG incentives if you're with NYSEG Electric, or if you're with Con Ed or some other companies, they have similar incentives. But NYSERDA does offer what's called an Assisted Home Performance Program. That's traditionally used for weatherization, but sometimes we can get approval to divert some of those matching up to 5,000 funds towards certain types of heat pumps. The current income cutoff for that program is just about $120,000 for a household of 4. But just want to let folks that at the end of this month, that program's income eligibility will be shifting. So if you don't want to miss out on an opportunity and you think you may be affected, reach out to me and we'll get you situated. NYSERDA also offers a low interest loans down to the lowest amount of just about 3.5% for the interest rate. That can also help make it affordable. And we have a lovely partner that we work with, Sustainable Tompkins. And they actually have some different grants. So pending where you live in certain parts of Schuyler or Seneca County, there is a heat pump grant that can provide $10,000 towards a heat pump, $300 towards heat pump water heater. We'll be chatting about heat pump water heaters in a couple weeks from now. And there's also carbon offset fund from local folks offsetting their travels. So there are some funds from that can go into offsetting your cost for a heat pump up to $2,500. So basically the gist is everyone, pretty much most folks can access the NYSEG incentives, and then we will help to braid in other incentives to help make it to a spot you're comfortable with. Save heat pumps for your home. I also want to do a shout out for folks on municipal electric. Maybe you're in Parks of Bath or Penn Yan, for example. There are incentives for residential and small commercial. If you're doing an air source, it's $1,200 as a blanket amount if you're doing a full home system, and $800 if you're doing a partial home heat pump system. You can still get that federal tax credit of $300 with your tax liability. Ground source heat pumps, if that has a blanket incentive of $2,000, but you can still tap into that 26% federal tax credit possibly. So still have some good options. If you are a small business or nonprofit, we can explore some other options for funding support. If you are specifically a small business, unfortunately not for nonprofits at this point, the USDA has a Rural Energy for America program. Gary Pereira actually just spoke a ton with us about this a few weeks ago. We posted that presentation and slides, so let us know if you have questions. But basically they have competitive grants in October and March to help put in heat pumps or get some other energy upgrades done. This is for if you're on municipal, NYSEG, or other utilities. You can check this out. If you're on NYSEG Electric and you use less than 300,000 of those heating units, which for most small businesses, that's probably going to be the case. We'd refer to those prior incentives we chatted about. But if your place is a bit bigger and we need more BTUs coming this way, the incentive is a custom incentive. That's $80 per million BTUs of annual energy savings. And newly as of this July, if you pair that with eligible envelope work, that good old weatherization of insulation, air sealing, and some other measures, you can actually get a bump to $100 off per million BTU for energy savings. So basically, if you have questions, reach out to us on this because there's some great options coming our way. When we're looking at financing options, We are looking at, there's a lot of them. So for residential, for example, there's NYSERDA low interest loans, anywhere from about 3.5% to 7.5%. There is an Alternatives Federal Credit Union that's local. It's based in Tompkins County. But if you're a resident in Seneca or Schuyler, you can also take advantage of that. So that might be a good fit. There's also traditional banking. Small businesses can check out the USDA has a loan guarantee for businesses. There's NYSERDA loans, credit unions, traditional banking, and our vetted program contractors also have various financing options. So you can pick what works best for you. Okay, so your neighbors, whether you believe it or not, have actually been adopting heat pumps to help with their energy costs. So we have quite a collection here. I couldn't fit everyone on the screen. I'm sure there's much more to come. Nancy, I'll actually flip back. Nancy is the one here standing with her garden. Nancy actually is from Burdett over in Schuyler, and she has a cottage home, and her husband, that is their primary residence. And they actually got a mini split air source heat pump. We were super excited for them. They had been heating with a propane space heater and a pellet stove and electric baseboard. So it was a whole bunch of different types of heating systems going on in the home. But they still were really cold in the winter time and uncomfortable. And then in the heat, her husband has some health concerns, and it was just exacerbated by the heat. So they were very excited to get a heat pump to do heating and cooling to really meet their comfort needs. They were able to work with our one of the local contractors, and they got Empower work done for weatherization. So they got the home nice and cozy with insulation and air sealing, and then put in heat pumps. They ended up getting 3 mini splits of those separate units we saw that were wall mounted installed. And as we can see in this picture, there are 2 outdoor condenser units. So the original cost was just shy of $18,000, which is like, oh my goodness. But they were able to get, there was a temporary program called the Heat Pump Demonstration Study through NYSERDA. So they got about $12,500 off from that. And then they also got the NYSEG incentive on top of that at about $5,500. So the cost for them was really actually nothing. So they're going to be paying their electric bill and doing pretty smooth sailing from there. And we went to do an interview with them, and it turns out that their cat is also a big fan of the heat pump. Evidently, when they got it installed, as soon as they turn it on, the cat goes running to the bedroom where the heat pump is and is extremely happy. So all is well in Nancy's household. This next story is about Jim over in Hector, and I'm going to go ahead and let Matt Dennis from Halco. He's one of our vetted program contractors we work with. He actually might be one of the people coming to your home to do an audit. But Matt, if you would like to chat a little bit about Jim's story.
Yeah, so what we did at Jim's place is he's got an Airbnb that he uses. It's right up the road from his primary residence, which we also did work in. Yeah, he had an old propane furnace and a super old air conditioner that no longer worked. So we went in. It was a single wide manufactured home over a basement. We went in and we did a bunch of insulation and air sealing to tighten up the building envelope to make it as efficient as we could. And then we put in a multi-zone ductless system for heating and cooling. Went really smoothly. Jim was really happy. We also had to do some electrical upgrades. The electrical service in the house is a little wonky, so we had to button that up. And we were able to utilize the NYSEG rebate, which is on the screen there, $2,800. And then we used the Comfort Homes program to cover some of the weatherization stuff. So the operational costs over propane were, our operational savings rather are going to be huge. There's an old propane furnace that was way oversized for the house. It was incredibly inefficient. And then now the house also has air conditioning, which was much welcome. When I went out there to inspect the installation, it was like almost 100 degrees, and thankfully he had the air conditioner on, so I appreciated it. But it should be a great addition. It's going to be a selling point on his Airbnb site as far as having high efficient heating and cooling in the house. And yeah, but like I said, it went very well. It was pretty smooth, simple installation. And as I mentioned, we're also doing a much larger project at his primary residence there.
Yeah, and I actually went out to visit Jim and his partner Melissa in this image. I went to visit them last week, and Jim's really excited to see how it goes. He's going to have someone staying there soon, and he's very excited to get them trained on how to use the air source heat pump and see how people like it. So thank you so much, Matt, for sharing. And I'm sure we'll hear from Jim down the road a bit more. All right, so as well as our community members, our neighbors, our friends, we actually also have some building owners who have been adopting heat pumps as well. So there's definitely many more than I can fit in this picture, but I wanted to highlight for ground source heat pumps. Evidently, Seneca is very popular for ground source. Who knew? Sheldrake Point Winery adopted a ground source heat pump, and they actually utilized that USDA program that we mentioned earlier to help with that. And then also I went to the Seneca County Fair several weeks ago, and someone was like, oh, right up the road, there's a North Seneca ambulance, and yeah, they have a ground source heat pump. So I drove over, and it literally was right up the road. And so that was super exciting. They're also looking in the future to pair it with solar. Very cool. The other three businesses I have listed here all have air source heat pumps with those ductless mini splits. Over in Schuyler County, we have Lakewood Vineyards who have those, which I was very excited because one of the owners or participants is on our board for the extension. So I was very excited. I was like, oh, you have air source heat pumps. And then over in Yates, so we have Oak Hill Bulk Foods, which people traverse past as they're going over to Penn Yan. As well as Stork Insurance right in downtown Penn Yan. So I'm very excited to see these options, and hopefully they'll be an inspiration to other small businesses in the area. Even Houses of Faith are adopting heat pumps. The Hector Presbyterian Church has a partial heat pumps, air source heat pumps. So in their kind of community space as a commercial kitchen, they have a mini split system, and then we see some volunteers with Hector Heat Smart, which is a micro campaign we're helping to support the town with. They're standing in front of their condenser unit, so they're very excited. Over on the right-hand side, we have an image of a church that is in exploration phase. The Willard Christ Episcopal Church just had their version of an energy audit that you get for small businesses, and they added on a clean heating and cooling screening to check out heat pump options. So we're very excited to see what they do next because they want to get off their old oil boilers. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll have a story about them the next year or so. So let's get funky and energized with some benefits. So we've been chatting kind of off and on through the presentation about you can get this, and here's some benefits, but here's putting the benefits kind of in a nice package all together to take a look at. So we're going to be kind of doing a run through of the cost savings, getting down to about a third, possibly down to almost a third of the cost compared to those propane oil electric resistance systems. I know I keep saying them, but driving at home. We have our cold climate made heat pumps that we have with our program. They heat and cool, running off electric. They're great for health and safety, lowering the carbon footprint, and they're pretty darn easy to take care of, just with a little bit of care. So how much can we save? So in this image, we're looking at estimated cost per unit of heating that would get translated into million BTU. So that's taking gallons of propane, gallons of oil, therms for gas, kilowatts of electric, and putting them all into the same unit for comparison. So if we're looking at the top, we're looking at electric resistance heating, looking at NYSEG rates being used. That could be anything per million BTUs of about, $37, $38. Whereas if you're looking at air source heat pump, which also runs off electric, less than half of that at like $15, $16, or ground source heat pumps at $9 or $10. So we can really see a really nice comparison here of possible money being saved from shifting from those expensive systems to an air ground source heat pump. Something to keep in mind with these numbers is it's not considering distribution, which can have an effect. If you have like a ducted air ground source heat pump system in a very leaky basement, it's not going to be as efficient. So we also want to check in on those weatherization options. And of course, having the system installed properly makes a big difference. So protect yourselves from fossil fuel volatility. That's a mouthful. Hopefully I don't have to say that 3 times in a row. So this is just showing, we're looking at the orange kind of lines here, which are pretty high with the propane. We're looking at the black lines, which are oil, and we see some big spikes and then big divots and then big spikes. So not very comforting to see that. Whereas we're looking at the electric costs for air ground source heat pumps, they're staying, there might be little humps up and down here and there, but they're fairly stable. So switching off of those expensive systems where, you never know from year to year how much that's going to cost can also be a breath of fresh air. So again, they're heating and cooling. And actually, I did want to chat about, this is something I wanted to show with like efficiency. And I could do a crack at this, but would one of my heat pump contractors like to chat a bit about this diagram and explain what this means?
Don't all volunteer at once. I can do it. So basically what this chart is showing is that how an inverter driven heat pump works. So with a standard traditional heat pump, that's the gray line there. It's usually a single stage or 2-stage unit. It just doesn't have the capability built in to sort of deal with the extreme temperatures. So the colder it gets, the capacity goes down, but as does the efficiencies. So colder temperatures, lower efficiencies, lower outputs. The orange line there shows a standard non-cold climate heat pump. Inverter driven, still high efficient, but it has a similar problem. It just can't maintain that lower temperature or that output at lower temperatures. However, it does perform a little bit better the colder it gets. The orange line, you'll see those types of systems in that are mainly used for cooling, or in areas of the country or areas of the world even, that don't have to deal with the temperatures that we deal with here. That gray line you'll typically see as is usually used in a hybrid system or a dual fuel system, where you've got a gas furnace paired with a heat pump, where the heat pump will shut off at a certain temperature, and then the gas furnace will take over. The blue line, that's what we want to see, is the cold climate unit. So those systems have rated capacities of 100% or better, even down to 5 degrees. And past 5 degrees, it does dip down, but you can see even at -13, it still outperforms the other heat pumps that sort of fall off the grid there at higher temps. So when anytime somebody says, do heat pumps work in our climate? Yes, they do, but you got to make sure you're talking about the right heat pumps. Heat pumps come in a lot of different flavors, so it's really important to make sure you're looking at the right ones. They all have their place. They all have applications, but if you're looking for 100% heat pump heating, and maximum efficiencies that can deal with our winters in central New York, then you want to look at the cold climate systems.
Awesome.
And this one says Mitsubishi, but all cold climate systems share this similar, will show the same sort of trend.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. And yeah, so we're really excited about that. So I know that always comes up as a question. It's like, well, but we're in cold climate. It gets really cold. Does it work? And I'm like, yes, it does. And all of our contractors put in cold climate heat pumps, so we can get those incentives through NYSEG, et cetera. So great. All right. So also, again, improving indoor air quality is another benefit. We mentioned if you have allergies earlier, but also if you have like asthma or COPD, this can be a reality. Again, there's no combustion from the heat pump. You're not getting any kind of wood dust or ash, which can agitate things for your body. So this can be a great fit. Mini splits during cooling phase can do some dehumidification of the space, which is also an added benefit. And both the mini splits as well as the ducted systems, of which ducted can be air or ground source, come with different filters that you can easily take care of. And some mini splits come with allergy cartridges. I think that's what I'll want when we get a home and put those in, definitely the allergy cartridge. And they're easy to take care of. Air source heat pumps, definitely follow the manufacturer's guide, of course, but you can usually vacuum or rinse those out and wash or replace the allergy cartridges. Make sure you clear if there's any like leaves or snow or anything around the outdoor unit, clear that away. Someone I know who has mini splits really loves them, but he was like, the mice like the lines. So just make sure there's no nests or anything getting built temporarily there. You may, depending where it's situated, need to direct water away from it with a rain cover. That's not always necessary, it depends. Cleaning the duct filter. If you have a ground source heat pump, usually you're pretty good to go. I mean, you might have to clean out like a duct filter if you have a ducted system. If you have an open loop system, which is less likely, but it may happen pending what it's like when the people get in there and go to dig. You might need to get like an acid flush done every once in a while, every 5 years. And I know Steve is on with us from Lake Country. I know he mentioned that's pretty simple. Steve, can you explain if people are in a situation where they have an open loop, what that scaling reduction, the acid flush is like? Is that something that's intense or pretty easy to deal with? Oh, we may have lost Steve. So what Steve had mentioned when I was chatting him about this at a prior meeting was he was actually saying that it kind of is almost like getting an oil change. You don't have to do it very often and it's pretty inexpensive. I think he was saying it's anywhere from like $100 to $200. So compared to doing like a clean and tune up, which you don't really need to do with these systems if you did a ducted system, it's pretty low cost and easy to take care of. So again, easy maintenance overall. So then circling back to Health Over Home, Planet Earth, looking at the Climate Leadership Protection Act, we're hoping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the board to 85%, or reduction of 85%, I should say, by 2050. Again, as we looked earlier, it's 30 or low 30s that we see for greenhouse gas emissions from heating and cooling. So these are our goals we're kind of trying to set forward that heat pumps can help us get to. So definitely climate change is real, or at least, it's getting hot and we're not all enjoying that. So it's just kind of time to face that. And honestly, a lot of people who used to not have to do cooling as much now have to do it more so just because it's getting so hot. So this is something that's kind of real, and heat pumps can help be a solution in many ways. So when we think about this, think about the point of not ask yourself, not can I afford this, but can I continue to afford heating the way that I do? And that could mean things to different people. That could mean, can I afford this monetarily, financially? I had someone who came in with me today and we were filling out an application, and she was like, I have a granddaughter and, she's looking to me for, what can we do about this situation? And I'm doing this for her. So you can look at in ways for like the future generation. Can I afford this? For my grandchildren, my nephews, nieces, grandchildren, and there's many ways to look at this. But yeah, and can I continue affording the way that I do? So kind of looking at that as a bigger picture, I wanted to chat a little bit about what I call the starfish story. Some of you may be familiar with this in different forms, but the gist of the story is that there was this little girl, and she was over on the lakefront, she actually wasn't on the lake, unfortunately, she was over in the ocean. But all these starfish had gotten beached when the water had gone out and they weren't going to make it. So she was going along and she was picking up a starfish and throwing it in the water. She'd walk a little bit and pick up 1 or 2 starfish, throw them in the water. And there was actually someone who had a beach house a bit up the way, and there's this older gentleman, and he went out to grab his cup of coffee and sit outside, and he saw this little girl, and she was picking up a starfish and throwing it in the water. And he watched her again, and she did the same thing, picking up a starfish and throwing it in the water. And he saw her do this quite a few times, to say the least. And after about an hour, he was like, "This is ridiculous." So he got out of his comfy chair, he goes down, he talks to the little girl, and he says, "Little girl, like, this is really sweet, but you're really making not a difference. There are thousands of starfish here. You're not doing anything." And she looked up at him And she smiled and she picked up a starfish and threw in the water and said, I made a difference for that one. Picked up another starfish, put in the water and said, I made a difference for that one. And after doing it a couple of times, the old man shrugged his shoulders, walked along with her, and also picked up a starfish and threw it back in the water. So this is basically to say that every action, no matter what the size, can really have a positive impact. This is really like a community effort that also has like, high quality positive impacts on your household, on your business. So be part of the Sea of Movement, or in our cause, because we're in the Finger Lakes, be part of the Lake of Movement, I guess, to say in other words. So feel free to adopt a heat pump in your home. They come in all shapes and sizes, and we are ready to help you. We have our vetted program contractor teammates. We help you year round. You can call us over at the Heat Smart FLX South program to help you get started and to navigate options. And then we get you connected with one or more of our amazing contractors. They come to do a site visit, explain everything so you're at the point of making your decision, and then they help you get the work done. So what we're looking for you today is knowing that we're here to help you reach your goals, that heat pumps are viable means of heating and cooling from your home or business, that you can reach out to us at Heat Smart and we will get you started, and that you can feel free to support us and our work by engaging. Become a volunteer, tell a friend about us, check us out on Facebook. The options are endless. And thank you again. This is number 3 out of our 5 series of webinars. Our next one is coming up on September 1st. We'll be showcasing our contractor partner, Kevin from Fan Mechanical. I'm chatting with Paul, who we did some little snippet previews of about his ground source heat pump system. So it's a case study. And then following that, mid-September on the 15th, we'll be doing a lunchtime chat about how to heat your water. Maybe you should do it with a heat pump. So you can reach me again. I'm Erica Herman. I'm the Heat Smart FLX South Campaign Director. I can be reached pretty much any way. I can do phone, email. If you can try to change this bopping into the office, I might possibly be there. You can call to check in ahead of time. And we have a Facebook page. So again, we have some upcoming exciting webinars and opportunities. Those will all be recorded and slides made available to be accessible, whether you have computer or no computer access. So just give us a chat and find out more. So with that, we are going to open up the floor. We have some of our contractor teammates with us today. So just to see with the images before we close out the presentation for the time being, our vetted program contractors were selected by our review committee, which are made up of members, representatives from each of the 4 counties that we serve, Schuyler, Seneca, Steuben, and Yates, to bring these wonderful folks to us. So we have Dailey Electric, Halco, Lake Country Geothermal, and Van Mechanical. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of the main portion of our slides. And we're going to open it up to question and answer. But before we get into that, I'd like to do a little bit of a jump so our contractors could introduce themselves. So I'm going to kind of do a Hollywood squares and just pick one at random. If you want to introduce your company, what technologies you cover, and chat a bit about yourself, and then we'll get into some questions. Ryan, would you like to go ahead?
I had trouble with my computer here all night.
Oh, you're okay, Ryan. Go right ahead.
There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Dailey. I own Dailey Electric in Penn Yan. Small business. We specialize in ground source heat pumps and do air source heat pumps along the way, too. We also do residential plumbing and electric for new construction homes. We have currently 22 employees, I guess 23. My dad started the business back in the late 90s, and I took it over from him in the early 2000s. Pretty much stayed local right in Penn Yan. A lot of our employees all work in Penn Yan, and we transitioned into ground source. My dad was mainly conventional furnaces and boilers, and transitioned into ground source in the 2012-13. And mainly what we focus on doing right now is retrofitting and new construction geothermal. We install mainly water furnace products. So we install LG and GRE for air source, and really just try to do as much geothermal as possible.
Sounds good, Ryan. Awesome
I tried getting
sauce.
on to answer a question earlier. Sorry, Erica, and I couldn't even do it.
That's a-okay. We'll have more opportunities. I got a good curveball on today I'm going to share with you folks. So thanks, Ryan. And why don't Hal or Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce your crew?
My name is Matt Dennis with Halco Energy. A little bit about Halco, been in business since 1984. Have 150 employees. We cover 26 counties throughout central New York, the southern tier and the Finger Lakes. We are a whole home performance company, so that means we do everything. In fact, our motto is, yes, we do that. So if it has to do with the building envelope, insulation, air sealing, and tightening up the home, we do it. It has to do with geothermal heat pumps, air source heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, we do it. Plumbing, electric, basement waterproofing, solar, pretty much anything under the roof, we can handle for you. We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if you call us anytime, day or nights, a real life, living, breathing human being at the office will answer the phone. It's not an answering service. It's not a leave a message, we'll get back to you later. We really take pride in that. We all kind of work where we live. So we're not driving all over creation just to come out and see us. So typically somebody comes out to see you, they are local or at least semi-local. We've been doing this energy efficiencies and heat pumps for a very long time. We predate the heat pump or the heat smart programs. We like to think that they just kind of caught up to us. So we're part of several heat smart campaigns throughout the middle of the state, really, CNY, Finger Lakes, and Tompkins, and been with every one of them since the very beginning. So we're really proud of the fact that we offer so much and we do so much, and we want to be there to help you out, and hopefully we can take care of any issues you've got.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. And Matt, as mentioned, like if you do any weatherization work, he may be the one at your door front to greet you to do an energy audit. So we'll see who ends up there.
It is very possible.
Ryan, I had a question that came up earlier today in a phone call that had to do with ground source heat pumps, if you want to take this one. So this person is doing a new build. They're going to be doing a bungalow, and it's going to become their primary residence. And their question was, if they do a ground source heat pump, how would that work if they have an on-demand generator, if the electricity goes out?
You mean like a whole house generator?
Can we tackle it both ways, if it's a whole house versus for a heating system? I'm not as familiar with it, so you want to tackle that either way or both.
As long as the generator is sized properly for the heat pump, the backup generator could run anything. I guess I'm not sure what you mean by on-demand generator.
That was how that's how they worded it. So
Referring to like a portable generator, like a portable gasoline generator, probably.
That's not going to fly normally. That's just not, very rarely could that work. When it comes to geo or even air source, sometimes the load of a compressor is much higher and requires a bigger generator, especially if it's water to water. Water to air, if you have a 7 series or a Sycamore or something like that, a lot of times you can balance a little more because the startup. But if the auxiliary heat or something happened to kick on, well, you'd be in deep trouble if it wasn't sized big enough. Definitely some when it comes to generators and geothermal or air source, they need to be sized very properly and done by someone who knows what they're doing with generators.
Okay, so she would just check with whoever comes to the house to check out the ground source heat pump and probably let them know that and get some specs.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to need loads of everything in the house to make sure that it's properly done.
Okay.
But a plug and play generator, like Matt was saying, is not going to fly normally.
That makes sense. You need a lot of gas.
That's good for critical loads, like keep your refrigerator cold, but yeah, you're not going to run a heat pump off a little gas generator you pick up at the Home Depot.
Nope.
And then we were looking early in the presentation saying that mini splits sometimes have to go in a defrost mode. Do defrost modes, is that for all air source heat pumps or just mini splits? And what does that mean for like a homeowner?
Really, for the homeowner, nothing. They don't have to do anything. It just does it automatically. Most inverter driven heat pumps have a base pan heater, which is a little electric heater outside that's built into the unit to keep it from freezing. But the system will periodically in defrost mode take a little bit of heat from the house and send it back through the coil just to make sure nothing freezes. It's done automatically. It's not something customers have to worry about. They do need to know when that happens. A mini split will make an interesting noise when it goes into defrost mode. It sounds almost like a jet engine. And so that will freak somebody out if they don't know what it is. But once they realize that it's a total normal operation, we usually try to explain that ahead of time. So the first time it happens, we don't get a call saying my heat pump's broken. It's the defrost cycle is meant to protect.
Sounds like you've gotten a lot of those calls, Ryan.
No,
Sorry.
the first time I don't ever work on mini splits. And the first time I was standing with one of the guys next to it, and they were servicing it, and I was standing there talking to him, and it went in defrost mode, and I about flipped out because I thought something was wrong with it. I had no clue what was wrong with it. I was like, let me look at a geo system.
Yep. So it's like I said, it's perfectly fine. It's supposed to do that. It does it during the sort of the pre-freeze sort of time of temperatures. But it's meant to protect the unit and to keep it from freezing. So it's totally fine. It's nothing to worry about. It's an air source thing. It's typically inverter driven heat pumps, like that we install, like the LGs and Mitsubishis of the world. Some more unitary heat pumps like this single stage and 2-stage units don't have that. But then again, they're not meant to run in those temperatures anyway. Yeah, it's just a normal operation.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Eric, and just say that just to clarify that is, the defrost associates itself with the air source heat pump, not the ground source. And when you talk about the air source, it really doesn't matter whether it's a mini split or a ducted air source. All types of air sources that are operating in cold climate would occasionally need to go into defrost when they're operating in those very cold temperatures.
Yeah, because both the ducted air source heat pumps and the mini splits, those both have outdoor condenser units, right? So someone will know that there'll be something like that on the outside.
Yeah, they both have this identical outdoor unit.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's really helpful. I know sometimes our fridge turns on and then we're like, oh, what's that? So sounds like that would be something similar there. And then Ryan, for ground source heat pumps, I've heard there's certain types that not all of them, but some can come what's called variable speed. Some of us haven't really heard of that before. Can you explain that in like digestible terms, what that means? What that is?
Water furnace, I actually have a bunch of companies actually make them now, but like the 7 series is a variable capacity unit, has 12 stages and 9 stages and different modes. And it ramps up and down based on what the communicating thermostat tells it to do, changes. If you can pick like a active dehumidification, let's say, and it changes all around, ramps the fan speeds up and down, and it'll ramp the fan speeds up, drop the compressor down, and vice versa different times to try and drive the humidity down in the home. So the whole unit acts is variable. The drive's variable, compressor, blower, everything in it's variable, instead of the old style, like Matt was saying, single stage, 2-stage, where everybody has those, everybody still has them, they're solid, they work great, but it's like 66% turns on first stage and 100% on, and then you have backup. There really isn't a lot of variable state, variable speed, variable stage in water to water. There's a unit out now, it's a net zero unit that is variable, but there's not many of them out, and there's not many of them get installed. So that's water to water is more 1 or 2 stage, and it runs and goes, where air is a lot easier to do variable.
Okay. So so it sounds like, if someone wasn't sure about doing weatherization work and they put it later, it wouldn't have a negative impact if you had a variable speed, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Eric, I'll throw in too that the variable speed, again, they're available in both, you know, the air source heat pumps as well as.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, no,
Very
for sure.
cool.
And the difference is that, you know, that's where you typically don't want to use either of those in a setback mode. Because, you know, the object that the heat pump is trying to continuously run, and it'll ramp itself right down to a low speed, but keeping a nice, even, quiet operating system, and really doing a good job, like in the summer, of dehumidification and such. But it really tries not to shut off. It'll go slow, but not shut off. And again,
Yeah.
very similar operation, whether it's air source or ground source, when you're talking variable capacity.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And then if someone's doing an air source heat pump system, can they only do mini splits or only ducted, or can you do like a combination if you have an interesting situation with your home? And have you seen that happen before?
Yeah, no, combinations, we do them all the time. So, you know, that's the beauty of these systems today. We can do so many things that 10 years ago we couldn't do. You know, those hard to reach areas, those, you know, the bonus rooms above the garage and such were traditionally very difficult to heat and cool. And now with these systems today, again, whether it's ground source or air source, because ground source can have a unit that's very similar to what you would call a mini split. They look almost identical. So you can use those type of air handlers in air source or ground source.
Okay. And then Ryan, we get a lot of folks who obviously have older homes. Radiators, I'm thinking, are probably no-go, but how have situations been for possible retrofits for like electric hot water baseboard? We've been getting a lot of like people asking about that. Like, I have electric hot water baseboard, it's on oil or propane. Like, you know, what can we, is that possible? Can we get air conditioning from that? What does that look like?
Sure, there's all kinds of ways with that. We've done some where you've tore them out, and Samsung makes a system that has, it's basically the same as an air source system where you have high walls, consoles, ducted units, everything off of ground source. Or, you know, a combination of system where you know that you're running a lower water temperature to the baseboard or the radiators or whatever, and you put fan coils around, you could, to supplement it, and then you gain cooling out of it. You might know that the baseboard may only maintain the house down to, say, mid-20s, and then below that, the fan coil has to come on to maintain it any lower. You can change out the baseboard to a low temp baseboard. There's a multitude of options when you go that route. What you can do, you could put a combination system in. You could put a geo system in that just does the baseboard, and then you could put a split system in air source to make up the difference. You could do all kinds of things you could do to combat that, but getting that 180, 190 degrees is just not there yet.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. So if someone has a high temp system, or maybe they don't know, and your crew comes in to check it out, does high temp basically like, sorry, we'd have to just look at something else? Or can you even do anything with that high temp?
Oh, you just have to know how much baseboard's in the house, what it's doing. One house out of all the ones we've ever done actually had so much baseboard in it that we could maintain it to 68 at 0 with like 125 degree water. He just had baseboard. Every single inch of the house was covered in baseboard. It was an odd one.
Sound like trim.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Matt sees the same thing all the time. It's very rare, and you've always got to supplement it with something. It's just, you can't walk away from you can't walk into a baseboard house thinking that it's going to work with conventional geosystem and be comfortable with that. I'm not, at least. That's not something you would normally do.
Actually, Ryan, I can tell you, I did actually see a house like that a couple weeks ago, where same thing. He had thin tube in pretty much every square inch of exterior wall space in the house, and we could make it work. It work. So it's rare. It's absolutely rare. But when you luck out and you get somebody that oversizes the baseboard distribution for you ahead of time, that's kind of helpful.
We have done some where we got in, we're close to that. And like, let's say people's bedrooms, they're okay having the bedrooms cooler. You take the living room area and change it out to the low temp baseboard, and then leave the rest of the house the regular baseboard, and then know that you can get some more BTUs out of that. Just coming up with different ideas.
That makes sense. And then, so if folks are interested in doing the heat pumps, do your different companies offer different like financing options for folks to kind of explore to help pay for that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different financing options for folks. Obviously, with some of these projects, not everybody has those kind of funds just sitting in the bank waiting for them. But NYSERDA has a financing option that's pretty favorable, has pretty favorable rates as long as you qualify. And there's just general commercial financing that we have available as contractors. There are some local banks that have some good programs and good products as far as energy efficiency loans, specifically geared for energy efficiencies. But then there's also just basic home improvement loans that are out there. I've had some folks, retirees, that will draw out of their retirement funds for two reasons. One, to create the tax liability so they can take the tax incentives.
Okay.
But two, so that, they basically just come out of pocket, basically pay for the thing, just kind of write a check. The idea is, if you're replacing oil or propane, a high cost fuel, if you pay for it all up front, you're going to save. No matter what you do, you're saving money. And in a lot of circumstances, a loan payment is, can be equal to or less than what you're saving. So you're still coming out ahead. Every house is different, of course, but when you factor in all the different equations and your cost savings, there's a lot of good options out there.
All right. And then can you do, this is a question for both of you. Can you do heat pumps if you have like a mobile home? Is that something that's feasible or viable?
Sure is. We've done quite a few of them. There are a few things that need to be considered. A mobile home is a little bit different than a regular house. 99% of mobile homes have forced air furnaces and ductwork that's really small. So heat pumps move air at a higher velocity and a higher volume than a traditional forced air system. So that has to be taken into account. So you have to be particular, make sure you measure everything correctly, and know exactly what you have to work with. But to piggyback on one of your other questions is, can you mix and match heat pumps? Yeah. So in some situations, we'll take an air handler to replace the furnace to connect to the ductwork. Usually it has to be smaller because the ductwork is small. And then we'll put in a mini split or a high wall unit somewhere else in the house or two. Just depends on the home. Or you can put, ductless throughout a mobile home. The challenge is with ductless, sometimes it's not the most ideal way to do it because it's a long rectangle typically, so it's a little funky to heat and cool the space. But
that's true.
It's exactly what we did at Jim's house. His Airbnb is basically a single wide mobile home, and we put in one unit in the back bedroom and one unit in the main living space, and away it goes.
Very cool. Awesome. Ryan, we've been getting like more and more, it's sporadic, but more and more we've been getting folks who are doing like new builds or like new construction. So they're either like, maybe the concrete's poured and they have the radiant system, but there's no like, there's no like oil or propane, like they've just like poured the floor, or maybe they're still doing the blueprints and getting ideas. Can ground source heat pumps be a good fit if you're doing like new construction?
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge portion of what we do.
It's the time to do it.
Yep, absolutely.
And hopefully they call us before they pour the floor.
Hopefully.
I know. I get the call I got today. They'd already poured the floor. I'm like, all right, hold still.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
Hold still and let's try to get you set up.
Or even better, their builder put in all the ductwork already and they want us to put in a geo system.
Yep. It's better. I love it when they call and you go look at it and, well, we're ready.
Yeah, they're ready.
Cool.
Yeah.
So for like
Erica,
some of
a good piece of advice when you're talking to these people is, it's very, very important when they're doing in-floor radiant heat that they insulate under the slab.
Huge.
Because when people just put the tubing in and there's no insulation under it, a good portion of that heat's going to go down and not up through and into the house, and those systems just end up being in trouble.
Yeah. So if you have like an old system, sorry, not. If you have like an older system, say the propane's like 15 years old and you just heard about the geothermal, just as an example, how do you usually combat that? Is it's like, if they already have the insulation underneath, kudos, good. And if not, do you just size it kind of appropriately?
Because we've got stung a couple times without thoroughly checking and assumed that somebody put insulation under a slab. What we do now is we'll go in a closet or something and actually core drill the concrete and check to see if the insulation's there. And if it's not, we just go to a different distribution system and don't use the in-floor radiant, because if there's not insulation, it's just not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were using it with another system, they had very high fuel bills, I'm sure, because a lot of the heat was going into the ground and not up into the house.
Yeah,
So, Ryan,
fossil fuels can make up that heat loss pretty quick. So some people assume that it's just fine, you can plug geo into it, but that water can get heated up very quickly with a fossil fuel system. Geo can't do it. So yeah, anytime somebody gets excited about in-floor heat, I'll ask them, do you know if there's insulation under there? And when it's not, and they get bummed out that we can't use it.
Okay. And then for new construction, Ryan, do you see people going more towards doing ducted or more towards like the water-based, or does it just kind of depend on the home? What do you see, Ryan?
For us, it's about a 9-month cycle. So it'll be all forced air for 9 months, and then everybody wants water to water, and then it'll go back to forced air.
No clue where the cycle comes from?
None.
Okay.
I would agree with that. I have to have those conversations too, and it's tricky because I ask, you want air conditioning? Yes. Well, you do your heat and cooling off of the same thing, or you can spend a bunch of money and put in radiant flow.
Yeah,
heat. I mean,
exactly.
it's up to you. I'll spend your money however you want, but I mean, I try to be efficient about it. Yeah.
And one of the things I like with working with our brand program contractors, again, tonight we have the Halco team and we also have the Dailey team, but I really appreciate the education that you put into it. So would you folks like to talk a little bit about, Ryan, if you want to go first, and then Matt or Hal next, like what that component looks like, the education portion to helping folks when they're trying to decide on their system, or they picked it and now they're like, but how do I care for it? It's like my new pet. What do I do?
That's interesting for us. I would say that more and more it's becoming, people have already started to do research. Very rarely are you bringing it up to someone that doesn't already know. Some of our we do more new construction, I think, than Hal does. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. So we do get into more situations where contractors will just always want to put in a furnace or boiler. They don't want to talk about something different. And then we get there and talk to the customer, and they may not have thought about air source or ground source or whatever, something different. If it's somebody that's either GC in their own home or has an idea before they build it or retroing, majority of them have a rough idea education-wise what you're getting into. They just might not realize about variable capacity units or super low temperature units that we're putting in, or Halco's putting in, or something, and there are a lot of them aren't going to have they know they want something different, but they don't realize they need to do something at home before they can get it to be as energy efficient. So that's a conversation that a lot of people aren't having before we get there. Mm-hmm. So it seems there's more to the conversations than there used to be. And especially when you're giving someone an estimate or a proposal, it seems like there's more explaining to someone because there's so many options also of different things that there wasn't 10 years ago. It seems like a lot more of that. If that answers your question.
Yeah, sort of. It does. Yeah, it does. And then
so there's education is a major part of this. We pride ourselves on information education. That's what I tell people. What I do 90% of the time is explain things to people and educate them, because there's a lot of information out there. I mean, you can Google and find just about anything. Whether or not it's accurate is a totally different scenario, and whether or not it'll work for their particular application. So it's important, we go in and we do a detailed analysis and we walk folks through exactly why things are the way they are, why things have to be done a specific way. You can't just show up and slap something in and call it a day. There's a reason things are done the way they are. It's the house as a system. So we have to look at the house as a system and figure out what it's going to take to make it happen. Sometimes it is straightforward and we could just slip something in without too much aggravation, but most of the time there's some complications to it that need to be considered, sometimes little things, sometimes major things. The bulk of what we do is retrofit. So it's a challenge to take something, this 21st century technology and put it into a 19th century home. That
we have a
was
lot
not
of
designed.
those.
Yeah, a lot of those. So this stuff was not designed with those houses in mind. So that's why it takes a real specific skill set to recognize what's happening in the house and how do we make what somebody wants work, and to make it do what it's basically what we're promising that it's going to do. And it's really specific. And when I walk around a house and I'm taking notes and I'm making, figuring out things, why things are the way they are, and explaining to folks, hey, here's why I can't just throw in a geothermal system in your home because your ductwork was designed for an 80% efficient propane furnace. And here's why there's a difference, and explaining to folks so they can understand and best and make a good decision. Because the last thing we want to do is say, yeah, we can do that, and it not do what it's supposed to do. That creates a lot of customer disappointment. And it also, there's a lot of headaches for us to have to come back and fix it. So we're very particular, we're very thorough, and sometimes the answer is no. And
oh, no.
People don't want to hear that. When you say, no, you can't have this. I know you want this, but you can't have this because of this. You have to do something else. Sometimes people get a little annoyed about that. But sometimes I am the bearer of bad news.
Yeah.
We do see, and I think that we've had these conversations before between a few of us, that when somebody's spending $50,000 to put a geo system in versus $8,500 to slap a new furnace and air conditioner in, they want every room to be the same temperature. And when you go in there and we know that we can't make those rooms at the right temperature because there's 2 rooms that don't have returns, and Matt walks through the house and says, we need to fix your ductwork. They don't understand why we're telling them that, but they're okay putting an $8,500 furnace in there and that room not being cool. You'll never hear from them again. But if you put that super expensive Cadillac system in, it better be perfect. So we all know that at this point, we've learned the hard way that we're fixing it or we're not doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which can be a difficult conversation sometimes.
Yeah, and I know I've gotten comments from when you were all getting interviewed back in the day. And we had some great remarks of like the artistry that really goes into designing these systems and the care that's been taken by your teams and putting them in. So we're really excited to have your teams on board. And some of our other contractor partners that aren't here tonight are Lake Country Geothermal, who focuses on geothermal, hence the name, for ground source heat pumps. And we also have Van He Mechanical, who does a focus on ground and air source. So if these are some folks you're interested in chatting with, if you connect with Dailey, you'll probably get Leah or another lovely member on the phone to help schedule your visit and get you started. And if you're interested in working with Halco and checking with them, Caitlin from their scheduling team will probably be the one to be calling you. So both teams have been amazing to work with, and we're very, very excited. Both have worked with a different Heat Smart campaigns, so we really treasure having you on board. So I guess just to wrap up the evening, I want to do a quick fun question. What is your favorite indoor activity to do when it is pouring outside?
Indoor activity?
Indoor activity. You can't really do the lacrosse indoors, Ryan. You might break some things.
I'll let Hale go first.
Oh, so we just put an offer in on on a new, actually a very, very old house, but new to us. And so we've been spending all our spare time inside researching furnishings for this old house. So
How old is old, Hal?
it's 1910. So yeah, I mean, it's not, it's old. We're looking for the old colonial style furniture. So
Very fun.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I stay, well, this is it. This is what I do. So
You do presentations every night.
sit in front of a computer screen. No, it's usually it's
No, I
I'm
work
on the
out.
road. What's that?
I said I work out. I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I said I just like exercising if it's raining out.
Yeah, I usually find something to do. I'm usually puttering around at the house. I'm in the process of redoing my basement, kind of, sort of. So I'm just kind of winging it down there sometimes. But it's we're so busy with heat pumps, it takes up a lot of my time.
Eric, I wanted to just quickly add, when you were talking about the education, that's the best part of being in this business. That, when sometimes that nasty word of sales gets brought up, and our sales really are educational, and it's measuring and verifying what they have, and then educating the customer and basing it there. There is no slickster used car sales part of our business whatsoever, and it doesn't need to be there. And that's what makes this business so enjoyable, because you really spend your time educating people and then deliver great results to them.
Yeah, and that's what we've been excited with both of the crews here, is that and some of our, I know Lake Country's not here, I know they do a big education, but that's what we're just so excited about, is like with all the expertise everyone brings and the years of experience that you have, that you can really all bring that to the table. So that's amazing. I think that about wraps it up, folks. I guess I'll seal it off with I've gotten addicted on my smartphone to reading webtoons, webcomics. So that's probably what I'm going to do when I get home and it's pouring outside. So that's my, I should be exercising, Ryan. I need to watch some of those videos because COVID's kind of taken an impact on my exercising. So I might have to check some of those and Leah's out. So if you have any good ones, send them my way. But
All right, I can do that.
With that, I'd love to say thank you so much again, Hal and Matt from Halco, Ryan and Leah, who I saw in the back screen, wanted to wave hi.
He was here.
From Dailey. Have a beautiful night, everyone. And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording and such, but have a wonderful night. And thank you so much for your time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.